Welcome, everybody. We've got a new episode of Real Freedom Stories, and today I've got Jeff Scislow. And Jeff has been an agent for 35 years, 34 of those with Remax results. And he just has a great story talking about being in real estate for that long, how the market's changed, how you've had to adapt, and his mindset has changed, and he's kind of run down some different areas as his career has evolved. So we're going to just talk about improvising throughout 35 years in real estate. So as I mentioned, Jeff, 35 years in real estate. He has eclipsed the $20 million in commission mark, and Remax honored him for that last year. And then also 2 times he has been in the top 10 of all individual agents with Remax back in 1996 and 2006. So welcome, Jeff. We're excited to have you. If you want to just give a little bit of your background, and then we can dip into how you got started into real estate.
Thanks, Mike, for the intro, and hello, everyone. How I got started in real estate, let's back up to after high school. I went in the Marine Corps for 4 years and served our great country, and then they trained me in computers. And after I got out of the Marine Corps for 7 years, I continued in the computer field and thinking that this was going to be my career, but I had this little let's say a little itch thinking I was on the wrong elevator, that there's another elevator that can go a lot higher than the IT department. And so I thought about it, made the switch, and got into real estate simply because I wanted to have more potential. I felt I had the ability to earn more than what they could ever pay me, even if I got promoted to certain positions. And so I got into real estate and hit the ground running. In my first year at Coldwell, I was able to sell 58 houses. So I was off to a good start, working primarily with buyers. It was kind of hard to get listings as a new agent, but I worked with buyers and really helped them to get into a house. And so very, very good start. And then at that point, I got into Remax. They recruited me over to Remax Results. I've been with Remax Results the entire length after that first year at Coldwell.
Now, you have a really good story, talking about how you got started, because I think this really speaks to your personality of, not wanting to have a limit on your income. You had talked about, when you first got started, wanting to be rookie of the year and finding out, what needed to happen to be rookie of the year. And I think you'll find this with a lot of agents where they're very competitive, they're very goal driven. And when they commit to something, they commit to something. So I think that's kind of a theme here of your production. But tell us about that story of being rookie of the year and what you wanted to do to hit that.
And to preface that, I use as another example, I think when a person makes the determination and they have the confidence in themselves, and I'm not trying to brag about these things, but when a person determines that they can do something, they believe that they can do something, and they're willing to pay the price, and they're willing to do what it takes to be successful to achieve that goal that they've set, I believe they can do it. I believe anyone can do it. So it's not something that I necessarily possess that's unique, because I've been able to do it. So going back to the Marine Corps, for example, my goal was I was going to be #1 in boot camp. I told my friends that. I worked out. I mentally conditioned myself before I actually went into boot camp, and ended up coming out top out of the entire series of 250 people, which was a surprise because I only wanted to be top out of 50 or 60, ended up being top out of the whole series. So I say that now to answer your question specifically. We had a program, or Coldwell had a program called Fast Start. And it was a 2-week training program, kind of teaching the ins and outs of real estate, how to make sales, how to get listings, that sort of thing. And so at the end of our final day, which was a Friday, the president, he came down and congratulated everyone, wished us all well. Here's a new pack of agents. Let's kind of see how they do. And we've just given them 2 weeks of training and let them loose. Well, I walked down the hall to Lee Olson's office. I says, "Excuse me, do you have a moment? I have a question." Because I already had a game plan. I already had a goal, and I wanted to become the rookie of the year. That's what I wanted within Coldwell Banker. And this is back in 1986. And so I said, what would it take to be the rookie of the year with Coldwell? And he thought, you could see it's kind of a peculiar question. He pondered and he says, well, there was a guy by the name of Paul Redlinger, and he was the top agent at Coldwell. So he says, well, Paul Redlinger is our top agent right now. And a few years ago when he started, I think he earned the most money that any Coldwell Banker agent has ever earned. And he earned $37,000 in his first year, and he was rookie of the year that year, and no one's earned more than that in their first year. Now, those are pretty bizarre numbers, right? 37,000. Wow, what a great income. So anyway, I smiled and I said, well, that's really encouraging. And he looked a little puzzled. I said, well, my goal's 50,000. I had a goal before I asked him. I just wanted to know if my goal was high enough. He just affirmed it was high enough. And so he says, well, okay, well, good luck with that. I mean, he was nice about it, but I could read his expression. And so let's fast forward 12 months. I actually had 75,000 in those 58 sales. Again, they were small houses, 79.9 single family houses or whatever. Right. But really dating myself. But it's a great business, as we're going to talk about. But I had 75,000, but I left. So I never really received the award, but I certainly earned what would have been called the Rookie of the Year. So that's why I've used that example. But again, anyone can set a goal. Anyone can make that type of a determination to reach what they want to do. And it takes discipline and it takes planning. And I think a lot of times it's important to write it down and then tell someone what you're going to do. When you start telling someone what you're going to do, boy, there's a lot of power. There's a scripture passage that says life and death is in the power of the tongue. The law of attraction, there's different ways that people might describe the same, situation, same scenario. And when we speak things as if they were, they kind of come our way. So I believe in that, but it also takes hard work. You can't just sit back and wait for it to show up. It doesn't usually work that way, but the two go hand in hand, hard work and speaking out your goals.
Yeah. Well, and I already picked that up when you had mentioned about being number one in your class in the Marine Corps, because you said, I told my friends I was going to be number one. So, I see that as a theme. And so what did you focus on? Because if the top agent did 37,000 and you did 75, you did double what they did. What was your game plan? Like kind of boots on the ground. How did you churn up all that business being brand new and doubling, what the top agent had previously done?
I worked, like I said, primarily with buyers. And so I began, and our office manager, he trained us as agents very well. We would go in at night at 7 o'clock. He says, everyone's coming in at 7 o'clock. It's kind of like that Glenn Ross. Let's teach these agents how to make some money. But he drilled us on dialogue and scripts, and we practiced that. It's the best thing I remember that he did for me personally, is he taught us those things. So for example, back then we had the big fat Coles directory, reverse directory, where we could get everyone's phone numbers. I would just look up the apartment addresses and I would start calling the people one after the next. My goal, was 50 calls a day. Then it got up to 100 calls a day. So I was trying to make 100 dials and talk to people every day. For example, if I was calling someone that was living in an apartment, I get their voicemail or I get them live. And I says, have you ever given any thought of stepping out of the apartment and into a new house? And people will say, well, yeah, I've thought about it, but I can't afford it. Do you know what it would take to get you into a new house? Not really. Well, do you have any money set aside for this? And I remember one guy saying, one of my first sales, he said, I've got about $10,000. I said, well, that'll do it. I says, are you willing to use that to get into a house and stop renting? And he said, yeah. So he was one of my first 5 sales, but he had 10 grand and he never thought he could buy a house. So I did a lot of those type of things. I made phone calls all the time, always prospecting. And as I would say now to agents today, you've got to carve out at least 2 hours a day. If you're going to work 8 hours, 10 hours, or 6 hours a day, carve out about 2 hours a day and prospect. You should have a list in front of you all the time. As I began to do more and more business, I started hiring admin, and they would prepare the lists for me. Expired listings for sale by owners, apartment renters. I would call, some are seller leads and for listings and others are buyers. I was always calling. I wanted names and numbers in front of me. And now they're internet leads. And I know a lot of us think they're kind of a waste of time because a lot of the people are just tire kickers. I think it's still important to call them. And if they're a tire kicker, to say, well, do you know anyone, maybe friend or family or someone at work that is in fact, or you can change the question up and say, who do you know, maybe a friend, a family and so forth, that might be buying a house in the next, say, 3 to 6 months. So you ask them an open-ended question so they don't say yes or no. These are some of the dialogues that you learn. And then they may not be ready. This internet lead may not be ready. However, they know people that are ready. And if you ask them in the right way and you're doing as the Romans do, and in Rome do as the Romans do type thing, you build that rapport with your voice, with your tone, and so forth. If you call and you get a voicemail and they talk really fast, then you can talk really fast. If they talk pretty slow and so forth, then just slow it down, because people will resonate with you based upon personality and based upon your voice. And so that's really important. These are little things that make a big difference. And if you're going to be hitting home runs or if you're going to just keep hitting singles.
And these are things that, thinking about 35 years, technology has changed, the market's changed and all that, but those principles have lived for years and years and years. Knowing your scripts, being able to relate to people, mirroring and matching, their tone and their pace. That's stuff that, it doesn't matter how long you are, because people want to work with people they know, like, and trust, and you're just building a connection with them.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so many times people treat leads as leads, but they're real people that want to work with somebody eventually. And if it's not going to be you, it's going to be somebody else. So you have the opportunity to start that relationship. So then let's take a couple steps forward here. You had talked about, you hit a spot in your business where, you were growing. You mentioned you hired admin, and then you got to this spot where you're like, hey, what if I hired another agent to help me with working with buyers?
Well, this is going to go back to 1992. And I had this idea, unheard of. I never heard of it before. And I thought, what if I could hire an agent to show houses for me, to delegate, and somehow we'll split up the commission. Mm-hmm. And that would allow me to focus more on getting listings. The more listings, the more buyer calls on my listings, because I have signs out there and I want to focus on that. So, but I can't do it as well if I'm out showing houses, because it takes more time typically to make a sale when you're working with a buyer. Mm-hmm. Especially today. Anyway, right. So I was a speaker in Atlanta in 1992 at the Remax convention, and I had this idea in the back of my head. It had nothing to do with the topic. At the end of my talk, I says, before we wrap up, I'd like to ask the audience a question. Now, the audience was about 200 people in this workshop, and comprised of Americans and Canadians. Mm-hmm. So I ran the idea by, says, here's the idea that as an agent, we would hire another agent and they would show houses for us and so forth. Has anyone heard of anyone doing that? 0 hands went up. I said, how many think it might be a good idea? And a third of the room raised their hand. And I said to myself, that's good enough for me. So I came home and I ran an ad in the paper, and everything was in the newspaper back then. Any type of promo. We didn't have all the social media and online, internet wasn't even around. By the way, in 1995, first agent to have a website in the state of Minnesota. Can you believe that? 1995. Yeah. Okay, lots of dating going on here. So in 1992, I run this ad after the convention, and oh my gosh, I got all kinds of flack from other agents. Who do you think you are? I mean, you're just some arrogant, lazy. You don't want to show houses. I got a lot of flack from people. Mm-hmm. And one person answered the ad. So he came in and he had sold 3 houses in 9 months. He was ready to quit the business. He came in and he had a part-time job. He says, you got to quit this and this and so forth. So what we ended up doing is, I said, Steve, the one thing you're going to need to learn is to know, you have to understand the people that are ready, willing, and able, because you're working. He shared his leads with me and so forth. Mm-hmm. He was working with all the wrong people. When he came in to actually start a couple of weeks later, he brought in all of his leads, and one by one, he says, you're wasting your time. I'm crunching up these little pieces of pink paper, and they all went in the trash can, wasting his time. They're not going to buy anything. And so now he's got no leads. He thought he had leads. Yep. And this is what I say to the audience. If you think you have leads, ask yourself, are they ready, willing, and able? If they're not, you don't have a lead, get rid of them or put them on some tickler file or something, but work with the people that are ready, willing, and able. So mm-hmm. Steve comes on board, had sold 3 and 9. So he's selling, I'm going to give some percentages here. He sold at the pace of 4 houses a year. And believe it or not, the average agent today sells about 6 or 7 houses a year. Mm-hmm. Not a real good living, but that's the average licensed agent. And so Steve was at the pace of 4, and he was on a 50-50 split. So let's just say he's getting 2 100% deals a year, okay? Mm-hmm. So Steve came on, and I said, we got a lot of training to do, Steve. And so I'm going to start you at 30. I'm going to start you at 30%. And then after, as you do well, I'll increase it. So in that first year, he started at 30 and he ended at 35. So let's just say he's getting 33 for the sake of math here. Mm-hmm. Steve after training him and letting him loose, and I was giving him leads now too, because I don't want to, I want him to show the buyers. So I'm generating the leads. Steve sold 48 houses the first year. So what's a third of 48? 16, and 16 is 8 times as much as 2. So Steve's income his first year with me went up 8-fold. And he hung around for 5 years or so. And then he, for personal reasons, ended up leaving the real estate business. But great guy, first buyer agent that I'm ever aware of, ever heard of, Steve Hall. So Steve, it was a great run. And whatever you're doing today, I wish you the absolute best. He was a great guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that just shows too, I mean, because as agents, we like to chase shiny pennies, and there's lots of pennies to chase. But thinking about the idea of that idea of the buyer's agent, a lot of people laughed at you, a lot of people scoffed at you, and you felt it in your heart of hearts to go after it and turn it into something. And then you mentioned about the website too, being the first agent with a website. So, I'm sensing a theme here of finding new ways to do business, trying to find new ways to evolve your business as well. So, kind of moving along next, we talked about, guaranteed sales. You believe strongly in them and what they can do, things like contracts for deeds. So talk about your experience with those, and even doing this, back in the 90s, where a lot of people are doing it today. You did it a long time ago. So talk about how those came to be for you.
Yeah, back in the 90s, I would offer a seller a guaranteed price in their house. It helps me to get the listing and so forth. And again, our market today, for the agents that are new right now, we're in a totally different market. We'll probably get into this a little later in the program. But back then, let's just say it's an average market. The absorption rate, which means if no more listings come on the market, how long will it take for the existing inventory to sell? It's about 4.5 months as a normal market. Right now, we're at 0.9. We're under 1 month. Because the inventory is low and it's selling quick, we're in an unprecedented market. So back then and now is different. But at the time when we had a normal market, on a listing appointment, I would say, if your house doesn't sell in 90 days, 60 days, whatever the market is, if it's really fast, you can shorten that period of time. And I would do a guaranteed sale that if it doesn't sell, let's just pick a number. Let's just pick a number back then. Let's say the house was $150,000 listing. Okay. And I would probably guarantee that house, it's priced right. I feel it's priced right. I would guarantee it anywhere from 135 to maybe as high as 140, depends on the market. Because if it's at 149.9 and it's not selling, you're going to go to 144.9. You might sell it for 140. Back then, they didn't sell at 100% or 110% or whatever they're selling at today. Totally different market. So your guarantee has to be less than retail because the seller's getting the convenience. If it's not selling, then maybe we priced it a little high. We have to bring it down. And so there's a lot of components to a guaranteed sale. I won't go through them all, but after so many showings, the price should be adjusted. I don't want to buy the house, but if I did have to buy the house, I'd buy the house. The other thing I would do using this scenario, let's just say the guarantee was 138,000 and we listed it at 150. And if it didn't sell, then I'd buy it at 138. Sometimes the seller said, would you buy it without even showing the house? I said, well, would you take 135? I'll buy it today. And sometimes they say yes. Other times, well, we need a little more. And then I take them out at 138 in this scenario. What I would then do is I would waive the commission typically. Let's say it's 8,000, keep it simple. So now it's 130. So I'd buy their house for 130. And then most of the time, if I didn't keep it as a rental, I'd put it back up on the market by owner, contract for deed for 155, 159, because you get a little premium. These are just relatively fictitious numbers, but they're not out of line. Right. So a little higher than the 150, maybe 155 since it didn't sell there. And then, I take, whatever low down payment, maybe $15,000. That's 10%. That's pretty low in a contract. Mm-hmm. So, but then what am I doing? I didn't take the commission, so I didn't get taxed on the commission, but I'm actually financing my commission. That $8,000 is in that number. So now I'm earning, back in the day, the interest rates were 10 or above. And so on a contract, easily get 10%. So I'm getting 10% on that $8,000 commission. So I'm earning an extra $800 every year on my commission. And then when I actually get paid off, I'm paying capital gains on it versus paying ordinary income on it. So I did a bunch of those. I'm going through it quickly, but mathematically, if you know your numbers and you know a little bit about the tax law, got a good accountant, you can start making good decisions that'll build your wealth over time. So that's kind of what I did. I did is guarantees to get the listings. If I got the guarantee executed, if we transacted on it, then I would sell it on a contract for deed. I'm the agent. I sell a lot of things on contract for deeds, Craigslist, Marketplace, and so forth. I still do today. And so that's just another way to build wealth. I mean, when you look at it, you're coming way ahead by doing something like that. If you didn't need that $8,000 commission, go ahead and, finance it out to a future buyer and start earning interest on it and then paying capital gain tax.
Now, how many agents back then were doing that? Because I know guaranteed sales are more common now, well, and less needed in this hot market. But how many agents were doing it back in the 90s?
Not a lot. I mean, people would come and go. And I know that there were some companies and some groups of agents that started doing it more in the 2000s, right before the crash, and they got buried because they had all these guarantees on these houses that they had to buy, and a lot of them went bankrupt. So yeah, it depends on the market. Like, it's easy to do today because the market's crazy. The inventory is so low, they sell really fast. It's so easy to do guarantee sale. From an investment standpoint, it's more important if you can find an opportunity to buy something. If you own a piece of real estate, you have an asset that's probably appreciating at a pretty good clip, and there's a lot of things you can do. It's amazing. If you have a property and you want to sell it on a contract for deed, there's all kinds of creative things that can be done in this kind of a marketplace.
So how many properties then did you pick up kind of during that time in terms of ones that you ended up ultimately holding as investments?
I had several dozen, and then I lost a lot of them on the market crash. So, the only advice I would give there to anyone is don't do too much of something and thinking. I had 16 properties in Florida, and a lot of them here in the Twin Cities. And then the market just imploded. In 2007, it started going down. It kept going to 2011. So it's like a falling knife. And I worked, for about 3.5 years to kind of deleverage myself, negotiating with the banks, short sales, some of them, trying to sell them and get any equity out. It was a brutal experience. One that I learned a lot from. Didn't have to file a BK, stayed afloat, but it was a huge loss from what had been built up. But it was built up with this incredible 2003 to 2006 price increases. Back in the day, I mean, the net worth was going up. It was ridiculous. It was going up 6 figures a month because of all this real estate appreciation. There was marketplaces that were appreciating over 50% in Arizona and Florida, 50%. Crazy appreciation. And so, that was a game, and a lot of people lost, but it is what it is. And we learned from it.
We're taking a brief pause from our episode. We'll get back to you in a second. This is Mike Swenson. Are you looking to get more out of your real estate career? Are you looking for tools and systems and ways to build wealth so that you can have the financial freedom that you desire? I have a vision to create 20 millionaires over the next 20 years, and I want to do that for you. If you're interested in learning more about that program and how I can help you, reach out to me at mike@realfreedom.com. That's MIKE@RELFREEDOM.com. Thanks. Well, I think that speaks to too. I mean, if you're going to be in this industry for 35 years, you're going to have your ups and you're going to have your downs. And so, for anybody that's gotten into real estate, myself included professionally. Now, I did buy my first home back in 2006. And watched it go down. But in terms of being full-time in real estate, I haven't been through a market downturn like that. And so just understanding those things happen. And when you're in it long enough, you're going to have to figure out how to adapt, and you're going to have to figure out how to adjust and improvise, right? Which is what you had to do. There was no rule book on here's how you offload properties as the market's tanking. You got to figure it out.
You think something, and it's just like, look at today. What do you think's going on in the world? I really don't know. I don't know what to believe. I mean, today's more bizarre than anything. But back then, as the market was on its way down in 2007, I was really big with the Florida. I wasn't licensed there, and people think I was licensed in Florida. No, I set up referral programs down into Florida. and did a tremendous amount of business down there. And unfortunately, the market went down. And so people that bought and owned real estate in Florida, they lost money. I lost money, as I just alluded to. So, but I remember I think it was the first quarter of 2007, I had an article in the Sun Country. You know, they had the little magazines and stuff. I would write into the articles once in a while. And I remember I put in there, I says, you know, this is just a minor correction. I mean, see, I didn't know. I didn't have a crystal ball, but I remember the article. I still have it somewhere buried in a file. This is a minor correction. It's not the time to sell. I was totally wrong.
So talk about the Florida piece a little bit, because I think that there's a lot of ingenuity there in what you did. And so you had set up essentially from people looking from Minnesota to go to Florida, and you would find out these properties and then allow them to invest. So share a little bit more about that program that you did there.
Sure. You know, the buzz was back in 2003 or 4 when I kind of got started in this, that 80 million baby boomers are going to retire, and a huge percentage of them are going to go to Florida. So that market's going to really blossom and explode. And so I started to talk to people that might want to buy a place now while the prices are lower. And as a result, I was working with other agents that were already kind of doing this. So I kind of piggybacked on them. I'd refer to Minnesota agents that worked in Florida or had a license down there. And that's kind of how I got started. I bought a couple of properties myself. And then I thought, you know, I'm going to go down to Florida and I'm going to learn more. I'm kind of like the salmon swimming upstream. So by 2005 or 6, 2006, let's just say there, I'd already developed a really good program. Now I had a resume. I could go to what they called the developer. A lot of the sales that I was involved in purchasing and also sharing here were condominium conversions. They were apartment buildings that were being converted to condos, and the person that did the conversion was called a developer. So I went down there and I wanted to meet the developer. I said, I'd like to be your out-of-state agent. Here's my resume. Here's other projects that I've sold in. Here's how many I have sold. If you'll allow me to do that, I actually like your product. I like your location. I like the building. I like the prices. And what these developers did, they would guarantee the investor rent. Your rent is guaranteed for 12 months, maybe 24 months. Here's how much you're going to get. So when you look at the rent that's guaranteed, they're going to put a tenant in there, whether they have a tenant or not in that property, you're going to get the rent for a year or two. So what am I paying for the property in exchange for, in relation to the rent? So I created a formula, and, you know, overpriced properties were 0.3 or 0.35%. In other words, take the rent and divide it by the price. And if it was 0.35, it's kind of expensive. If it gets up to 0.50 or anything higher than that, which was rare, that's a good value. So I used a relative scale and I went shopping. So when I found something that I liked the location, I liked the building, and I liked that ratio, I thought, okay, this is maybe something I can buy. And I'm willing to buy, but first I'm going to talk to the developer. And I'd find out who it is, get a meeting. Here's my resume. I can be your out-of-state agent. I'd like to be paid, you know, X percent. And those referral fees that I was asking for were equal to a full commission, because I'm the out-of-state agent, but it's called a referral fee. I'm not representing anybody. I'm not representing the buyers. So when I had that agreement in place, I took a lot of pictures. I bought one myself, and then I created a PowerPoint. I created cable television. Back then was popular. So TV ads. We had green screen sitting on the beach, me and my lender buddy. And so we would talk about these projects on the TV commercials and invite them to come to the seminar at the hotel, wherever we're holding the seminar. And we'd get 50 or 100 people sometimes showing up, and we'd sell sometimes dozens of properties at one of these events. And when we say sell them, they're interested. We get their name and so forth and address. And then the developers team would send us by email a contract. And the contract would allow them to buy. And I had a disclaimer. I'm not representing you. You know, there's no guarantee of future. Because when the prices went down, they tried to come after me and said, well, this guy should have had a crystal ball. We lost money. Seriously, Department of Commerce came after me. Didn't do anything wrong. I had a disclaimer. I mean, but it was a nightmare after the market crashed. But this is how I built this up. And it was all with good intention. I was buying in multiple cities. I had 16 scattered around the state. And I thought they were really good opportunities. I really did. And unfortunately, we all lost a bunch of money. In 2006, I did 223 sides in Florida from Minnesota with a couple of trips and doing seminars. So it was a huge opportunity, but it didn't last because we had liar loans. We had all that subprime lending, and that's really what caused that market to crash, unfortunately. And, it seems to be going good. Everyone's excited. Everyone wants to buy more.
So, okay. So then fast forward a little bit, here maybe about in the last 5 to 10 years, you started doing a little bit more with flips, and have done that a little bit more. Why don't you talk about your experience with that?
Well, in the sense of the word flip, let's define. Flip means fixing something ugly and making it beautiful. Okay. I started doing that where I would hire contractors and I was turning it more into a business versus maybe one here and there. So I started doing that in 2013, and I think I've done 27 or 28 of those, and I've kind of stopped doing that. It was just too much. I had 3, 4, sometimes 5 projects going on at one time, and that just got to be too much of a headache, too much stress. I track everything.
Were you buying them, fixing them up, and then holding them? Or were you, the goal was just flip it and be in and out as fast as possible?
Correct, to sell it. Now, let's just say I wanted to hold it. I wouldn't go to a full-blown flip. When you flip a house, it should be a 9 or a 10 on a 1 to 10 scale. I mean, at least a 9. It's going to be nice. That's when you sell it. If you put a renter in there, 2 years later, it's back to a 5, maybe at best. So when I fix something, I would always sell it. So these would be sold. Average profit is about $43,500 profit per flip, with about 27 or 28. I stopped doing those almost a year ago, with a minor exception. I did one last summer where I put $5,000 into it. That's a minor flip. I've had some where I put over 100,000 into it. My average flip, I would buy in the 1s, 2s, maybe 3s, and then I'd sell it for at least, whatever. There's the profit after expenses and so forth. You can kind of do the math. But I stayed in that kind of bread and butter range so that I could turn them quickly.
And how would you find out about them? Were they just telling other agents? Were you marketing? Was it just your kind of sphere of people that have worked with you in the past, or how did you find those?
There's a number of different sources. Wholesalers are typically new into the real estate industry. I'm members of the Minnesota Real Estate Investors Association and also Minnesota Real Estate Club. I get leads from those organizations. Wholesalers that are new, they'll find the deal. They'll go find someone that's going into foreclosure, and they try to then sell it off. Sometimes the wholesalers make great money, maybe as little as 5. I had one wholesaler make $35,000 selling me a place around Lake Nokomis for, I probably paid $180 for it, if I recall. I don't remember, it's a few years ago, but he made, maybe I paid $220 and he bought it for $185 or something. He made $35,000. I thought, wow, that's a huge wholesaling fee.
Yeah.
But with as many problems as I had in that house, I still made over 40 myself. And I had a lot of problems that I should have never had with contractors. So how do I find them? Wholesalers is one source. I would actually get online and look for pre-foreclosures. I tried to contact a few lawyers. That wasn't working so well. I found them on MLS. I'll look for something on the MLS and I'll find something. The one that I did last year, I found on MLS, and I think I made $45,000 or $50,000 on it, but I've sold it on a contract and I'm still making interest.
Right.
So yeah, they're just, when you, I'm not looking for them right now because my business continues to evolve into, let's say, components or aspects that are more lucrative. So I kind of flow in that direction when I find something that works. And so I think, through referrals, through networking, through the wholesalers, through pre-foreclosures, you can go to go down to the courthouse and look, and look them up yourself if you have the wherewithal and time and energy and skill to do that. You can buy courses on finding foreclosures. You can drive by houses and look for long grass and peeling paint and then go knock on the door. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do.
Yep.
And then you want to know a little bit how to do that. So that's a business in and of itself. Finding them is important. Finding the deals is important, but they are out there. And I was talking to someone the other night. They said, aren't the deals really hard to find? I said, don't say that. As soon as you say that, you won't find anything. Say, I'm just ready. I'm ready, willing, and able to find the next deal. That's the way you want to talk. So they're out there.
Yeah. So then kind of the last piece here moving forward to today, what does your business look like today?
Well, the inventory, as we know, is very short, or it's very tight. I'm doing very little advertising and marketing in that category to pick up listings. It's extremely competitive. And so in that sense, past clients, referrals, great. They come virtually at no cost. If you're keeping in touch with your database, your client base, past client base and so forth, you should be fine in getting that business that flows in at very little cost. I always ask for business. I'm always, I go out to eat all the time. I'm single and I don't cook. There you go. I'm always out to the restaurant, right? So anyway, I'm always giving out my cards everywhere I go. Who do you know that might be looking to buy or sell a house? And I get names by always asking. Always have cards. Always leave them with the check and so forth. The other thing that with buyers right now, I won't go into the specific details, but if you're working with buyers, and we're all kind of working with buyers, it's really, really competitive. And so I would take the time and acquire strategies that you can put into contracts that'll give you the advantage. We might have chatted about this before, but 10 out of 14 of my buyers last year were in multiple offer situations. Obviously want to get there before anyone else. And if you can work something with the listing agent, if at all possible, to get a good offer in right away, that's good. Then you fend off the competition. But 10 out of 14, we won, and we were not the highest, hardly ever. But there's other clauses that you can put into the contract, other things you can do. Again, I don't want to get into it because the market's so competitive. But I call my clauses Santa clauses because they keep on giving. And when I meet with a buyer and they hire me to rep them, I tell them some of the examples of my Santa clauses, and we laugh and so forth, but they work. So what can you put in your contract to give you the competitive edge? I would just encourage the viewers to think about that. What can you do to be competitive? What can you do to win? And, after I lost a couple of them earlier in the year, last year in 2020, I says, this is terrible. We got to start over again. So if there's 10 offers on a house, do you want to be the one that wins or one of the 9 that loses? I don't want to be one of the 9. So I started to develop Santa clauses, and they work. Not guaranteed, but a high probability.
And if you think about a buyer's agent, they're going to spend so much time chasing properties, showing properties, writing up offers. And so if you can find a way to keep them as clean as possible and as strong as possible, it can be the difference between doing 2 deals a month or 3 deals a month. Because if you think about all the extra time you're going to spend chasing properties, it really makes sense to be as sharp as possible. And you found a way to do that. So hats off to you.
Yeah, it's just a matter of if to give a suggestion for an agent that's lost. Why did they lose? It might be price. Of course, price is important, but what other elements can you put in your offer to make it stronger? And you have to be careful because you're representing the buyer, and they always have to make a choice. So for example, if you said, well, why don't you waive the inspection? That could be really bad advice if there's a problem with the house later, but you can introduce that to them. And there's other components relative to the inspection that you can incorporate into that offer so that it's much more attractive to the seller based on how you word it. So I won't get into the specifics, but there's a lot of things like that. I would encourage the agents to think about how to make their offer more competitive. It's all about being more competitive. It's all about really giving the seller what the seller wants and reducing the risk to the seller. How do you do that? Sure, you can do it with earnest money. Those are the obvious things. What other things can you do? And I would encourage people to think about it, come up with their own Santa Clauses.
Yeah.
I just have the original Santa Claus. No. Anyway, it's like I said, I have fun with the business. We laugh about it when I'm meeting with with the buyers for the first time. And make sure you get your buyers under contract. I know there's people that I don't need to get them under contract until we find the house. Everyone has a different way of doing business, but if I'm going to commit to them, they're going to commit to me. So they're just business 101.
Yeah. So taking a look back, Jeff, then thinking about, as we talk about kind of financial freedom and time freedom, 35 years in the business, it's had its ups, it's had its downs. You've adjusted, you've kind of went with the market. Talk about a little bit of the lifestyle freedom that you've had now as a result of kind of all these little things that you've done over the years have really added up to a really great career. So what does kind of time freedom and financial freedom look like for you today as a result of all your 35 years of hard work?
Well, I always paid my contractors with American Express, so I have a lot of Delta miles. It's little things like that, for example, that, I can fly forever. I have a lot of miles, for example, because I flipped and I paid everything on a credit card. Well, there's an example of where, I've deposited those in an account that I can fly. It's not going to cost me to fly around the world and many, nothing, because I've deposited those based upon a plan. I said, okay, well, I'm going to build up the miles. That's an example. And if you like to travel like I do, that's a pretty good gig. So what's important to you as an agent? What's important to you? So cash flow, if a person decides they don't want to work, they don't want to go into the office, they don't want to prospect anymore, they're all done. Well, if you have bills and you have no income coming in to pay those bills, you're going to go upside down. So again, it's all about knowing your numbers. And I'm not trying to give necessarily a financial course here, but if you have rental properties, for example, there's cash flow, there should be. And if you have contract for deeds, which I have a lot of those, that's part of my new business model. I'm creating more and more contract for deeds for buyers. So I've got income coming in on a regular basis based upon those investments. And for those of us in the real estate industry, boy, oh boy, we should be owning real estate. Are the prices too high? It's too late to buy. I shouldn't buy right now. Not necessarily, because the prices are probably going to continue going up. Probably. The national number, November, going back to November of 2019, that 1 year, prices went up 9.5%. Huge increase because low inventory, low interest rates. What's going to change that? What's going to send the prices down? It would have to be something catastrophic that we probably can't see right now. I don't know what that might be, and I'm not going to think in that negative sense. But with low inventory and low rates, prices will continue to go up. They should. Hopefully not too fast, hopefully steady, 5, 6, 7% a year. But they're up around 10% a year. That's huge. That means that $300,000 rental property is going to be $330,000 maybe in a year. So why wouldn't you want to buy it now, lock in a low interest rate, start getting a cash flow? If you put 20% down on that to avoid the PMI, your cash flow at today's investor rates, it depends on, if you get 3.5, that's great. Maybe you're 4 in an investor loan, something like that. You're still going to cash flow on that $300-$400 a month, maybe a little more. Depends on the taxes and so forth. Why not put that $4,000, $5,000 a month cash flow in your pocket and ride up maybe $25,000, $30,000 appreciation over the next year and pay down the loan? Maybe you're paying the loan down at a clip of $250 a month. That's $3,000 there. So you made 3, you made 5, that's 8, and then you got 25 to 30. You're up to $35,000 a year by buying a rental property today. Why wouldn't you want to do that? Plus, you get to depreciate the house. And if you buy the house at 300 and you put $5,000 of little spruce up in it, you might get a $10,000 return. That's called forced inflation. I'm going to cause the appreciation on that house to go up by putting some strategic money into the house, make it a little nicer. It'll be easier to rent. I'll get an extra $100 a month in rent because I put the $5,000 in. So I get paid back over time, but I've also increased the value. All these things are little components. When you start doing them on this house, on this house, on this house, you track it on a spreadsheet. After a while, you have no problem with paying your bills. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And you truly are somebody that knows your numbers. I mean, just in the conversations that we've had, you're rattling off numbers, back from the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. And so, just knowing your numbers is key. And I totally agree. Over 35 years, small little deposits add up to really big deposits. And so you found ways to build a little wealth here, build a little wealth here, build a little wealth here, and that's going to add up and add up and add up. And I think so many times agents are short-sighted. They just think of, how much did I make this year? How much did I make next year? And they get out too soon. They go back and they look at their job of, hey, I made $100,000 last year, but my first year in real estate, I made 70. So I can go make 30,000 more if I go back to my other job. Well, yeah, but that's 1 year. If you think about 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, now you've got a chance to get into investments, to do more things and build more long-term wealth. So you're certainly an example of that, of somebody who's, ran with the market, ran with different ideas and improvised over time and found ways to build that wealth. So thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. If your story has resonated with people, how can they best get a hold of you?
I'll give you an email and a phone number. Feel free to reach out. My email is my name, Jeff@Scislow.com, Jeff @SCISLOW.com. And text me at my cell if you wish, 612-747-9900, 612-747-9900.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jeff, for coming on. We really appreciated all the stories and appreciated you sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Mike. It was good to be here. Have a great day.
Yeah.
This is Mike Swenson. Are you looking to get more out of your real estate career? Are you looking for tools and systems and ways to build wealth so that you can have the financial freedom that you desire? I have a vision to create 20 millionaires over the next 20 years, and I want to do that for you. If you're interested in learning more about that program and how I can help you, reach out to me at mike@realfreedom.com. That's MIKE@RELFREEDOM.com. Thanks.